The film begins by showing a little village. Back then, there was a young girl getting ready for a trip to a city in Cambodia who wanted to explore the city and meet her new boss. When she got to the busy city, her boss, a man, greeted her and gave her a bottle of drink with something to make her sleep. This made her realize the shocking truth that they wanted to sell her. At the same time, the scene changes to a Cambodian policeman named Tony Vitayakol. He dressed up like a potential buyer. His job was to stop the bad guys who were selling people. Soon after, he attacked them without mercy to achieve his goal. After he got important information, he gave the young woman some money and told her to go back to her village. Meanwhile, in a busy restaurant, we meet a big shot named Viktor Dragovic. He's in charge of a bad group that moves people around illegally. Viktor is a real important guy. At that moment, he brings together his 3 kids, Andra, Ivan, and Goran, to have a party for Andra's birthday and talk about their own businesses. Sadly, Janko can't make it because he's busy with his own stuff. At the same time, in a police station, a bunch of FBI agents are busy making plans to catch Viktor. They got a tip that Viktor would be up to no good at a port close by. Right after that, the boss of the FBI team, Nick, thinks up a plan to catch him right there. Soon after, Viktor shows up at the port with Andrew for a deal. But turns out, everyone they were going to sell things to is already dead. This makes Viktor really mad, and he gets really mean with one of his men who messed up. In the middle of all the craziness, he tells Andrew to kill that person. However, Andrew wasn't sure about that order. Seeing his child don't want to kill his man, Viktor shot the man right there. Soon after, Nick, with his friend Reed, led a bunch of really good soldiers to rush in. Pretty soon, there was a big gunfight, and in the middle of all the craziness, Andrew got shot a lot and couldn't make it while he was trying to run away. Viktor got really angry and frustrated, and in the end, he gave up and surrendered to them. At the same time, in a police station in Russia, Viktor found himself being asked a lot of questions by some really important FBI people, along with his own lawyer. But there, Viktor managed to get out of trouble and was let go from jail. This was really shocking because some FBI folks who were supposed to be fair took money from him and did some bad things. Right after that, the scene moves to a bar. There, Tony met up with his partner, Min, there. Min is also a spy cop and Tony's girlfriend. At that moment, she had an important job to do. She needed to find out stuff about what Janko was up to. Turns out, Janko was doing bad things with people, moving them around illegally. Then, in his room, Janko got really bad news. His brother got killed by the FBI. Hearing that, he felt super sad and super mad and promised to get back at the people who did it. At the same time, Nick was at home with his daughter Sofia and his wife Rosa. At that time, they were hanging out. Then, late at night, something terrible happened. There was a big explosion at their house. Turns out, Ivan and Goran did it, and they wanted to get back at the person who killed their brother Andrew. Rosa got hurt really bad, and Sofia died in the attack. It's really sad. After the really terrible thing happened, Nick ended up in the hospital. His police friends, Reed and Costello, came to see him and gave him the really sad news that his wife and kid didn't make it. They'd also told him that Viktor, the guy causing all this mess, got let go by some bad people in charge. Nick got so mad and decided he had to find Viktor and his family to make things right. After all that, Nick went to the Russian embassy. He found out who was responsible for letting Viktor go. He took care of them, one by one, getting rid of them and getting important info about where Viktor was. At the same time, Viktor was in Cambodia, trying to stay safe at a government building. He wanted a place on the border between Cambodia and Laos. However, the boss of the government there wasn't sure at first because it was too close to their border. But Viktor said he would hurt his family, so the boss agreed. Meanwhile, in Thailand, Reed and Tony teamed up to catch Nick. They thought Nick was going to show up. Then Reed started saying that Nick was a really bad guy who killed someone from the Russian embassy. Soon after, they got to an airport and tried to find out where Nick was. But suddenly, something shocking happened that Reed turned on Tony, hurting him before hurting himself. In that moment, he was dying, but then he gave his gun to Nick. After Reed died, everyone believed that Nick caused all the bad stuff. Shortly after, Tony started going after Nick, and they had a really exciting chase. But in the end, Tony couldn't keep up, and Nick got away. Then during the night, Min called Tony and told him that Nick was at the club where she was. But they didn't know that Reed was hiding in the back, recording their conversation. At the same time, Nick was on a mission to find Janko, the guy who did the awful thing to his wife and kid. At that time, Nick wanted to get back at him by getting rid of him, but he couldn't find Janko anywhere. So he got info from Janko's guys and made them pay for what they did. Soon afterward, Tony showed up again, and the chase between him and Nick started over. At that time, they ended up in a big building, and Nick had someone as a hostage. Then Tony said Nick killed his friend. Hearing that, Nick said he didn't do it, but Tony didn't believe him, and they fought really hard. After their big fight, Nick got away again. Tony was surprised and decided he had to find Nick if he really did what Tony thought he did. At the same time, Reed went to Tony and secretly took Tony's own phone. Then he went back to the club to find out who talked to Tony. There, he looked at Tony's phone and the time of the call and found out it was Min. Meanwhile, Nick got into a warehouse where Janko kept people. At that time, he wanted to get rid of Janko and find out where Victor was. At the same time, Janko's guys were walking around and watching the prisoners, but fortunately, Nick was really good and got rid of them without too much trouble. In the end, all of Janko's guys figured out what Nick was doing, so there was a big fight with lots of shooting. Janko saw he was in trouble and tried to run away. But then Ivan and Goran showed up. They didn't want to help their brother cause they wanted to kill him right there and then. On the other hand, Nick knew what was going on. He asked Janko right away where Victor was. Soon after, Janko gave him the info and then he died. After that, Ivan and Goran's guys came and tried to shoot Nick with their guns. While they were shooting, Tony showed up and pointed his gun at Nick. It was a really tense moment. Then Nick told Tony that he didn't hurt his friend cause it was Reed who did it. But suddenly, Reed came out and started shooting at them. At that time, Tony realized Reed was bad all along. Then they fought with their fists. When Reed couldn't do anything else, he admitted that he was working with Victor for a long time just for money. Hearing that, he chose to kill Reed because he was so mad. Now Tony and Nick saw all the crazy stuff happening and used it to help the people stuck there get free. After that, they teamed up to go after Victor, who was going to a certain place. Soon after, the scene shifts to Victor and Min. At that time, he tells Ivan to get back at him for being a snitch to the police. Luckily, Tony shows up just in time and saves Min. There, he takes care of Ivan really fast. Then things get really tense and there's a big fight with lots of shooting. In the middle of all this danger, Goran tells Victor to go while he deals with Tony and Min. At that moment, Goran tries to hurt Min, but Tony is stronger and kicks him so hard that he dies. At the same time, Victor tries to get away, but Nick doesn't give up and keeps chasing him. Nick shoots at the person flying Victor's helicopter, and it crashes down. After that, Nick goes up to Victor, and they start fighting really hard. While they're fighting, Victor says something surprising that Sofia is somewhere, and he sold her to someone there. Now we know that Sofia didn't die in the explosion, but in this moment, Victor is really hurt and almost dead. A month later, Tony gives Nick a folder with info about where Sofia is now. At this moment, Tony and Min are out of all the craziness, and they start a new life together. On the other side, Nick starts a journey alone to find Sofia. And the film ends. The moral lesson from this film is when in doubt, just chase helicopters and fight bad guys until you find the missing person.